Lace 'em up, let's start the show. We're digging in with Trip. 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 We're digging in with Trip today, yeah.
Well, hello everybody. Momentarily we're going to dig in with a great Hurricane, Stanley Cup Champion defenseman, and now a super broadcaster for the San Jose Sharks, Bret Hedican, also known as Roy Hobbs, because he's the natural, always has been in everything that he does. For those of you watching on YouTube, I am wearing my zipped hoodie that Bret suggested and really maestroed himself, and that's why, aside from first and foremost, and most importantly, the way that he always had his shovel in hand and continues to, on and off the ice, you get a zipped hoodie if you want one, and you get it named after you. That's how much respect and love I have for Bret Hedican. So it's going to be a fun episode. I encourage you to check out the Hedican and all of our other merchandise at digintrip.com. I also encourage you to communicate on all of our audio platforms and on YouTube to let us know how we can satisfy you more, how we can grow. We have thick skin. That's one of the things you have to check to qualify as someone who digs in, thick skin. So please be candid, and there is no stupid question. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. We thank our presenting sponsor, and they've been there from the get-go, the New Country Auto Group. Their reach with dealerships and all over New York and Connecticut, Maryland, Pennsylvania, right on down to Florida. My car comes from their West Palm Beach Mercedes store across the state in Florida. They have just opened, cut the ribbon on, I think, the finest Ferrari dealership in North America, and probably could stack up against any Ferrari dealership in the world. So if that's your fancy, if you've been saving up, hey, how about some of you hockey players and guys in hockey management? You'll never look back if you decide to dig into a Ferrari. And if you do, New Country's Ferrari dealership that just opened in Naples, Florida, can get it done for you. newcountry.com. So without further ado, let's grab our shovels. And in this young hockey season, let's dig in with Bret Hedican, also known as Roy Hobbs. Do you know, I start every episode by asking my guests how they define digging in. But in this particular case, for those watching on YouTube, I've tried to explain it through the years. I call my dear friend Bret Hedican Roy Hobbs. He is Robert Redford, the natural. And Roy, as I look here in your upgrade of my clue library said Michigan, the musician you are those vinyls over your shoulder? I mean, Quincy Jones, David Foster, Clive Davis want to know, are those records back there?
Yeah, that's part of my vinyl collection. Just part of it. I got more vinyl, but yeah, I mean, I've got a little bit of everything in here, from Metallica to Led Zeppelin to the Eagles to Chris Stapleton, you name it, Bob Seger, old school.
Bob Seger, of course, a pure Michigander, and we dedicate this episode to Alto Reed, his saxophonist who just left us. Yeah. And your vinyls will go viral. If anybody's ever heard you sing, I'll tell you, you make them swoon. However, Roy.
Yes, sir.
I need you to hit the ice. It's the first time you've ever called me sir since I met you after the trade from Florida. I want you to define digging in. Now set the tone for the episode.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love, you kind of coming up with digging in and this idea of, I don't know, I read somebody the other day said something about, digging in, or if you will, when you're, 5 miles beyond what you thought your body was capable of, and you find a way to dig in and you find a way to keep going. And then you realize when you keep going that you can do it. And I think we all get into a moment in our careers, in our lives where we hit that wall where we think we can't go any further, or we don't think we can do it. We don't have the confidence to keep going. And you dig in and you keep going and you get over that big hurdle that's stopping you or preventing you, or you look at yourself a little bit differently and you find yourself that, hey, you're not perfect, but you know what? I'm going to put one step in front of another and continue to move up the hill. And eventually you realize that, boy, you're at the top of the mountain, you're looking down and you're going, man, I do remember the one moment where I said this to myself. I said, man, I was right. I was right to not stop and not give up and quit. I was right to keep going and keep putting that one foot in front of another. So, what does digging in mean, Tripp? It just means just keep believing and keep getting after it.
I know, my dear friend, that there is a physical element to that in preparation. So that's a key component, but being able to keep going one step in front of the other when your mind's telling you can't, is that a mental discipline? Tell me about the mental part of it.
It's a mental discipline, but I think it comes with practice, right? I think the one thing that people, they don't really realize the importance of the mental side of any sport, whether it be golf to hockey to, like you say, individual sports when we talk about golf, and figure skating, or tennis. These individual sports, it also takes some internal mental toughness to get through things. But in a team aspect, you've got other guys to lean on. But the one aspect that people never really put enough weight into is the mental side of any sport and the practice that it takes to get better at the mental side. I think, I had to learn some of these techniques as I got into the NHL. Wasn't given a lot of these techniques to learn mental visualization, self-talk, those things that I didn't have any experience in, and I had to learn them. And once I started to learn how to practice these things on a daily basis, then you get stronger, just like you would if you were to go down into the weight room and do some repetitions to some arm curls. Eventually you do enough arm curls, your arm's going to be pretty strong and you're going to look like Rod Brindamore. But I think what we don't realize in the mental side of sports is that, yeah, you need that mental side too. And it's equal 1-to-1. One physical rep is the same as a mental rep. So I had to get better at that, Tripp, as I went along.
Yeah. And, as this is all about digging in, and part of that is full transparency, you've taught me a lot about working on the mental side of things, in particular, facing adversity. So you've been a dear friend from that standpoint and will continue to be. Hey, listen, I'm a pure Michigander. You're a Minnesotan at heart. You're from St. Paul. Take me back to your childhood. I've had the dear pleasure of getting to know both your mom and your dad. What was your youth like for Bret Hedican?
Humble beginnings. My mom came from a family of 12. So she was number 3 of 12. So she raised a lot of her siblings and brothers and sisters. My dad, he had a couple older brothers and then one younger brother. And where my mom and dad grew up, they grew up on one square block where there was 100 kids in one square block. And my mom and dad, grew up in the same block together and ended up getting married and having us. But, humble beginnings. I mean, both my parents were hardworking, Midwestern people. And my dad, had a job, but he also was a volunteer fireman. He was also on the paramedic squad. We'd get these buzzers go off at the middle of the night. My dad would have to get up and go to a fire or an ambulance run. My mom worked a couple of jobs. So I think as a kid, growing up in North St. Paul, Minnesota, watch my parents just work hard and to provide an opportunity for my sister and I to do things that, probably they didn't have a chance to do when they were kids. So I was always really appreciative of my parents, giving me a chance. And I think that was kind of the framework for me to not only want to, maybe get out of the small town of North St. Paul and do something, but also realize it takes hard work to get anywhere.
I remember vividly. That's what a great memory it is. At Old Mellon Arena. It might have been the first dad's trip. And you and I were bench interviewing warm-ups on the ice. We started down there, and then we tossed it up to John Forsland with your dad. I call him Reggie Jackson. And both of you could just see without any words, visually, the competitive nature. What were the greatest, aside from the work ethic and humble beginnings, the greatest attributes that you think you absorbed from both your dad, Reggie Jackson, and your mom?
Yeah, well, you're right. Reggie Jackson was, he looked like my dad, or my dad looked like Reggie Jackson. People have actually called him that. And even back when I was a kid, we've got a picture of him swinging me around at a park, and he had a nice big afro on him as well. My dad played softball several days a week, was a very good softball player, was a third baseman. And you got to imagine the hands it takes to be a third baseman. So I watched him be real competitive, my whole childhood. And I think that fire I have of maybe being doubted as a young kid, to not being big enough when I was younger, to trying to push through all that stuff, I think I got a lot of that competitive fire from my dad. And I hope I got maybe, a little bit of my mom's grace and a little bit of my mom's, steadfast, go to work every day, and just that grinding mentality that my mom seems to have of, never slowing down in a day. I hope I got a little piece of her in me as well. And very lucky to have parents as hardworking and good competitive people as I grew up watching.
You absolutely got that grace, because I felt it firsthand, because I pushed you into what would be non-graceful territory, and you're still graceful.
Well, I'll tell you, hey, Roy, I appreciate that, but I can't take any credit. But I will say the grace that you're doing here on Digging In, and obviously your broadcast, I love listening to you, buddy, and you've been teaching me a lot on just how to be a pro at what you're doing in broadcasting and doing color, man. You're a pro, and it's been fun to watch.
Well, thank you, my dearest of friends. And I never knew I'd become a friend, let alone a dear friend. When I first met you at a place called the Butcher Block near Brainerd, a summer training camp, when you were already in the National Hockey League. But let's dial it back. Tell me about your first strides, when you first fell in love in the land of 10,000 lakes, all those outdoor ponds, with the game of hockey.
Yeah, growing up in North St. Paul, we had a rink that was attached to our high school. And so I grew up going to that rink as a kid, in one day hopes I'd be able to go to that high school and then be able to, walk down after school and then walk right into the rink and put your skates on and off you go. But I also lived a block away from an outdoor rink in North St. Paul. And so my mom would actually, drive her car up a block from where our house was, where the rink was. And I would just, in the morning, go up there with my skates over my shoulder, as, you see kids do. They put their skates on their stick, and they put them over their shoulder. They walk up with their boots up to the rink. You put your skates on and you're up there all day. I mean, literally my mom would drive the car just up to the end of the block with a bag lunch and just throw it in the snowbank, saying, hey, just making sure you're alive, first of all. And then secondly, here, you better eat something. She was nice enough to do that once in a while. But I just grew up playing the game. Loved watching my older cousins who were really good hockey players, Dan and Pat Goff. They were really good high school players, went on to play at Michigan University. But loved watching them as a kid growing up, and really aspired to be, one of them, or, obviously grew up watching the Chicago Blackhawks, the Minnesota North Stars, and just fell in love with the sport. Just because of the grace of it, obviously the way you feel when you're on the ice, and was fortunate enough to kind of continue to grow in North St. Paul. I
think my intuition and my expanding gut that I'm trying to deal with tells me this is the right time to fit this in. Recent episode, Trevor Daley, who was a phenomenal skater in the NHL, said you were his favorite skater, and he asked during the episode, can I call skating sexy? And said, Bret Hedican was a really sexy skater. Your response to that from Trevor Daley, because he could really move up and down the ice himself.
First of all, what a compliment from Trevor Daley, who I've always respected from the day he came into the NHL, and just continue to love watching him play hockey. But, here's a guy that's undersized, never let it bother him, continues to just show up at work and compete, and finds the way he plays and makes it work. I mean, he's a quick, agile player, and he finds a way of being undersized to still be. You don't look at him as being undersized at the end of the game, because he was physical and he's in the corners winning battles. So to hear a compliment from him, first of all, is is really, really neat, obviously. But to be a sexy skater, to put his words, and it's funny, I think I saw the clip and he said, did he even think about skating? Does he even think about playing the game? Or just happens, whatever he said to that fact. And I laughed because it might have looked easy, but it was never easy. I mean, you're always out there. Hockey is a tough sport, and I think the older I got in the NHL, the more I realized that if I wanted to skate the way I wanted to skate, my legs had to be a lot stronger. And over the time of my career, your legs slowly get bigger and bigger, but early in my career, man, it took its toll. And finally, I think my body caught up to my brain and how I wanted to skate and how it was portrayed maybe on the ice. But what a compliment from Trevor. And thanks again for that.
Yeah, it was the coolest part. And he feels it was how you received it. That's one of the countless things that makes hockey great. Well, Trevor developed his skills in the OHL at Sault Ste. Marie. You developed your skills in that brain we're talking about at St. Cloud University. Your numbers retired there. You have other options with the Golden Gophers in Minnesota, Duluth. Why was St. Cloud the right destination for Bret Hedican?
Because it was the only team that knocked on my door, Trip. Nobody wanted me. That's kind of what it comes down to, literally. I had a couple of universities. I really wanted to go to Duluth because I had a bunch of relatives that lived up in Duluth and Moose Lake area who could have come up and watched me play whenever. But at the time, Duluth called me after St. Cloud had offered me a partial scholarship. And, Mike Surge, the coach, just basically called today. I heard that St. Cloud offered you a scholarship. And I said, yeah. He goes, well, I just wanted to wish you the best of luck. didn't say, hey, we'd like you to even consider coming to Duluth or anything like that. So, I was just really blown away by St. Cloud even offering me a partial scholarship. And it was funny. They recruited 10 players that year to come up as freshmen. And I was one of the 10 guys. I think they offered 8 of them full rides. And then me and another guy split the other full ride. But, and out of last numbers, everybody else got their number. And then there was 2 numbers left in the locker room to choose from. And it was me and Doc Del Castello. And I basically said, Doc, what number do you want? It was number 25 and number 24. And I just said, you pick, I'll take whatever's left. And he took number 25. I ended up getting number 24. And so I kind of won by default, number 24. But I'd say St. Cloud was a great opportunity because we were a growing program. They were willing to put some stock in some young players. I was just, again, one of those guys. And it allowed me my freshman year to kind of grow. I didn't play very much my freshman year. And finally kind of came into my own in my sophomore and junior year. And I guess, yeah, here I am after a long career. But what a chance. And I appreciate St. Cloud always for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Hetty, I think about talking about, how you found out about your draft selection. Same draft as your now lifelong friend, Rod Brindamore. But I'm going to jump into the Olympic experience, and we'll get to the NHL.
Okay.
When did you first talk about chasing the dream to eventually make the hockey club and be an Olympian in Albertville in '92?
Yeah, so I think going back to setting a goal to become an Olympian when I was 10, that was watching the 1980 Olympic team win a gold medal. And I remember sitting with my dad. We were sitting on the carpet, leaned up against the couch, watching the '80 team win gold. And I just remember saying, God, I want to become an Olympian someday. Now, that's a pretty lofty goal as a 10-year-old, but you set your path and you kind of say, how am I going to do that? Well, my best thing I can do right now is maybe potentially get a scholarship someday and play college hockey. That would be my next step. So I put myself in position to do that when I went to St. Cloud. And again, I never had an opportunity to play for a national team anytime as a kid growing up. And it was after my junior year college where I had a really good season in college. And I was on spring break in Florida with a bunch of my buddies and staying at one of my buddies that was on my team, their parents' house, and got a call. It was my mom and dad. And it was the old days where they were both on a phone in one of the rooms and said, hey, Brett, we just got a call from USA Hockey. They want you to fly home tomorrow, fly to Russia and represent the United States in a tournament called the Pravda Cup. And I think I remember my mom and dad crying on the phone and just this opportunity of a lifetime. And so flew home the next day, got my equipment, met the team in Boston, flew to Russia, and I really played out of my mind for 4 games, and because I knew it was like my chance of a lifetime, and played probably 4 of the best games of my life. And they asked me to try out for the national team that summer, and that's when I made the team. I left school my senior year, not knowing if I'd make the Olympic team. They picked the team in early February, I believe, when it was basically a plane was going to go to New York or you're going to go to France on the Olympic team, and my name was on the sheet of paper to go to France to represent the USA. And it was just one of those moments when you walk into the opening ceremonies, surreal, right? I mean, you set this path and the compass, if you will, to make an Olympic team. And there you are walking into opening ceremonies. What a moment.
Carpe diem, baby. Carpe diem. Okay, so now you're in the French Alps. Little did you know, not only were you setting goals, unbelievable special memory in the journey, but you meet your future wife. What was that first? As she's chasing a gold, what was that? What was it? Paint the picture. You're in the country that has the Louvre of when you first crossed paths with Christy Yamaguchi.
All the American athletes were in this holding area before we walked into opening ceremonies. And, all the athletes at that point were taking photos with one another. And that's kind of where this figure skater, pretty tiny gal, came over and was introduced to a bunch of us hockey players standing there at opening ceremonies. And that's kind of how it all started. And she walked over and introduced herself to all of us. I met her. And then that was kind of the first meeting trip. We didn't really cross paths until several years later when I was playing for the Canucks, and reintroduced myself in I think that 1994, 95 time. So that's about when it happened, buddy. And we, I guess the rest is history.
And boy, you fast forward way down the road, not to get on a tangent, but you and Christy, who I called the Yamarama. You guys tried to play Chuck Woolery Love Connection with Michelle Kwan for me, a.k.a. Kwanzai. Didn't take. But have you ever, because I am so enamored with this, for a figure skater, it comes down to whatever the long program is, every 4 years, and maybe you get another chance. And your old teammate, Kevin Weekson, and I were talking about this today. You have to be loose. You can't be tense as a figure skater. Have you ever gotten the tricks of her trade when it comes down to a once in a 4-year span chance like that, of how she got herself ready mentally?
Well, I think when you have a mom that's one of those tiger moms, I would say, and Carol, I'm sorry I just said that. But I would say her coach also, Christy Ness, she was tough. I think she was really tough on Christy, but Christy was able to accept it. And if Christy Ness, her coach, said, hey, go make sure you do 3 good, clean run-throughs in a row, right? I mean, when you're that prepared going into the Olympic Games, you're giving yourself all that opportunity to be that loose. As you mentioned, Kevin Weeks, you can't be tight. You got to be in that moment of being able to capture your ability to have all of your abilities come out in that moment. And I think if you're not prepared, it's going to be rolling the dice. But for Christy, she was prepared. She was ready and mentally tough as well. And she went out there and did it.
I just find that, if you chase the Stanley Cup like you did 94, 2002, eventually winning in 2006, maybe in the back of your mind, you've got another crack at it. The Olympic Games as a figure skater, and you cannot be tense. I just find that to be so interesting. Moving forward, the National Hockey League. Okay, you're drafted. What a pick. One of the great picks late in the draft. Same draft as your man, Rod, went to St. Louis. In the first round, you go to St. Louis. Rod's told me you guys never met in St. Louis. First time you met was in Carolina. But what do you remember about your Blues tenure?
First of all, being drafted, what a deal. Ted Hampson, the scout for the Blues, many years later said he saw me play one game, and when I was playing for the high school team at North St. Paul, he saw me play a game in Hastings, and he just wrote my name down. And sure enough, late in the draft, he threw my name in the hat, and I think they pulled my name out of the hat, and there I was in the 10th round. So. But after the Olympic Games, they called me. Went back to St. Cloud State University. I was going to start taking courses again to finish my senior year, I guess, if you will, because I missed my senior year because I was on the Olympic team that year. But I was going to go back and ended up getting a call from the Blues and offered me a contract. Took it. Was in Montreal the next day. Skated on the old Montreal Forum for the first time in my first National Hockey League skate with the Blues. Didn't play that next night against Montreal. A couple nights later, played my first NHL game against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the old Maple Leaf Gardens. And I can still remember that game, and even lacing my skates up, I can still remember that moment. But what an opportunity to represent, the Blues, be drafted by the Blues. And then there I was playing my first game in Toronto. So it was great. You know what, Trip, 3 years, it toughened me up a little bit because it was a tough environment there. There were a lot of veteran defensemen. I was kind of taking one of those veteran defensemen's job. And so I had to kind of get a little bit gristled in the skin, a little bit leather skin, if you will. And it taught me some of those things early on. And it kind of served me better as when I got traded to Vancouver and beyond.
Vancouver, little did you know, but that's when, to tell you the truth, I'm going to go right with Trevor Daley, calling you a sexy skater. I think I was a sophomore at Harvard, and that was during your run with Vancouver in one of the great finals in NHL history with the New York Rangers. And I'm like, who the heck is this Bret Hedican? Can he move? As a goalie, I like Kirk McLean too. But tell me about that run, and specifically what it was like to be playing the Rangers in such a dramatic series. I know it didn't go your way. And what big takeaways you had from one of the great runs and Stanley Cup playoffs that I'll always think of.
Yeah, first of all, Pat Quinn, the head coach for the Canucks when I got traded to Vancouver, was the perfect coach for me at that time in my career. He kind of took me under his wing and he kind of said, listen, I'm just going to teach you how to play defense, and we're going to start from the ground up. And that was kind of the thing that helped me settle down. I don't even think I probably would have been in the lineup had it not been for Pat Quinn, seeing something in me that gave me a chance to play. And I think going into the very first series against Calgary, I always say I went in that series a boy and came out a man on the other side, just because it was 7 of the toughest games I'd ever been associated with to that point. It felt like war. It wasn't war, obviously. I'm speaking in terms, but I would say it really taught me how to battle. It taught me how to compete. It taught me how to try to be fearless. And from there, we just kind of got on a roll. After being down 3-1 in that series, we came back, forced to game 7, won in double, triple overtime. Pavel Bure scores the goal. And then we just kind of got on a roll. We beat Dallas, and then we went to Toronto and we beat the Maple Leafs to go to the Stanley Cup. But playing the Rangers, I felt like when you talk about being loose, you have to be loose, play loose. I think I played loose that whole series, 1 through 6, and got a little tight in game 7. It taught me a little bit more about myself and more learning I had to do, personally, on how I had to handle pressure a little differently and maybe more mental reps, as we talked about earlier. But what a series that was, playing against the Rangers, going coast to coast, 2 games in New York, flying coast to coast to Vancouver for 3 and 4 back and forth. It was just one of those moments you always remember, walking up that long ramp up to Madison Square Garden to get to the ice. I can still remember, it seemed like every one of those games doing that. I can still remember them shutting down the streets as we had a 25 Harley Davidson police officer escort to Madison Square Garden on the games. And, people were flipping us off on the way by as we're driving to Madison Square Garden. They knew what our bus and who our bus was, if you will. But just a great moment to experience what a team felt like from the inside, experience what a great coach, fighting for you, feeling for you, building your strength. All those things felt amazing in that run.
Wow. Okay, first, and you had another Stanley Cup final in between with the Carolina Hurricanes against Detroit, but you would eventually play in another game 7, this time at home for Carolina. But what would you say the biggest things you learned about yourself and then improved mentally, like you said, from being a little tense in that game 7 in Madison Square Garden? What exactly did you learn, and how did you react to better yourself?
Well, you and I, Trip, have actually talked about a 2-on-1 with regard to playing defense and where I would be on a positional where it's a left-hand shot or right-hand shot on my left side and vice versa. But I learned a lesson in Game 7 in '94, and that was more tactically what I learned how I needed to play in pressure situations defensively. And I think I found out a lot more in that 2002 run with Carolina. And then when we finally got to the '06 run in Carolina, I felt like all of those things that I had to learn tactically, how to play defense under pressure in big moments, it's like I was battle tested in round 1 and round 2, and I was ready for round 3. And I felt like I could just be calm out there, and I could kind of let my strengths and understanding what my strengths were, and let those come to the forefront and not worry about anything else. And that takes a lot of practice. And I think, those moments of losing, obviously 2 Stanley Cups and losing some games in there or making mistakes throughout any one of those series, you learn from those mistakes and you have to carry those with you moving forward and learn from them. So I think I did that, and I felt like I could try to, relax in a Game 7. And sure enough, we ice it in the last shift of the game there. We, puck is dropped, knocked it down out of the air, give it to Eric Stahl. He gives it to Justin Williams, and he ices the game. And at the end of it, they're putting it into the net, empty net, 3-1. And so it was a great moment to be on the ice when the game mattered at the end, but also as a team, what it felt like to be inside that locker room as well, to be with such a great group of men.
Unbelievable group. Speaking of a great group of men, there are a couple of real good guys that are former dig-in guests in Brian Burke and George McPhee. And I want to, before we move forward, because they spoke so glowingly. I never had the chance to get to know Pat Quinn very well. Bret, gosh, I rarely call you Bret. Why did Big Pat Quinn, God rest his soul, have such an incredible ability to connect with people, number one, and 2, empower them to bring out the best in those people?
I think one word that comes to mind is accountability. And I feel that was the first time I saw a coach really hold every player accountable. And whether you were Pavel Bure, Trevor Linden, Kirk McLean, a guy you like to watch, it didn't matter what your name was. He held you to a standard. And I think at the end of the day, any team wants to feel like every player is held to a high standard and equally, right? And I think that's where I think some coaches get off course, is they might treat some players differently than others. Now, I understand there's some leeway there when you've got a real skilled player, but at the end of the day, they got to be held to an accountability standard. And I thought Pat Quinn did that beautifully. Not only did he had the ability to hold the team accountable, he knew what your strengths were, and he allowed you to understand what your strengths were and allowed you to bring that to the rink every day and nothing more. You didn't need to bring more. And I think he helped you understand that. And when you get that from every guy in that locker room, understanding what their role is, held to an accountability standard, all of a sudden you can do great things. And I can remember one story in particular, and sorry, Trip, I'm blabbing here about
bring it on,
stuff,
baby.
But Pat Quinn, it was the first few weeks I was there, and the forwards weren't coming back in the defensive zone. And the defense were back there. We were trying to find an outlet pass. Nobody there on the wing. They were, hustling to get back at the hash mark to be there available for a breakout pass. And I remember Pat Quinn coming in the locker room after the first period, and his fist was about this wide. And he came in and he yelled at all the forwards to come back and hit the brakes, and he put his fist into the whiteboard, and it literally caved in from where he hit his fist into the board, saying, "You guys come back and you stop right here." And I'll just never forget that moment of feeling that everything, the air got sucked out of that locker room, and it just brought everybody into the same realm of knowing that, hey, nobody's going to be able to cut corners. We're all doing this together. And I think that was one of the moments that I felt the team just kind of, just take off. And so I always have great memories of, like you said, God rest his soul, and Pat Quinn and what he did for my career and what he did for hockey. I love the man.
Boy, I can't. I'm thinking being from Detroit, thinking of the fist of Joe Louis downtown Detroit, and comparable to Pat Quinn's fist coming into that room with the dry erase board. Before you left Vancouver in that big blockbuster deal going to Florida with Pavel Bure, I feel like you faced some adversity there in Vancouver mentally. You were up to the task. You and I have talked personally about it. I know Mike Keenan was your coach at one point. What do you remember about that chapter? Because as your friend, it seemed like you were in the valley, but you not only survived the valley, you learned from the valley, and it benefited you from that point forward. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think, any NHL player or any professional athlete, you're going to have, like you say, peaks and valleys. And that was a valley for me at the end of my career in Vancouver, because when you go to the Stanley Cup Finals and then all of a sudden they make a bunch of trades and, players had to leave for free agency and whatnot, the team changed, and it took time for it to kind of come back. And I could feel it kind of getting to that point where we were ready to be a really solid contender and a playoff team again with Marcus Naslund and the like that we had. And when Mike Keenan came in, he liked to play those mind games. And I think it made me realize through that process of how much further I needed to go to be able to understand what my strengths were and what I needed to bring to the rink every day. And I think when you start to point the finger, one of the things that Pat Quinn did teach me is that, and what I took with me beyond the years when a guy like Mike Keenan was the coach, and when he eventually traded me to Florida, was I instead of pointing the finger at Mike, I really had the three fingers pointing back at myself and learning on what I needed to do mentally to get stronger and to be able to be ready for moments like that where nobody would affect this anymore in anything that I would do. And so it took many years after that, but to get to a point where I felt mentally strong enough to withstand Mike Keenan again, who I eventually ended up getting as another coach in Florida again many years later. But these are all moments that you have during your career that you can either, make a decision. You can either face your problems and face them head on, or you can turn the other way and not face them, and you end up probably out of the NHL and who knows what worse. But I think those are the things I'm most proud of over a career is, facing some adversity and continuing to move forward.
You had me at hello because I had become a Bret Hedican fan when early in your time with Vancouver. So when Jimmy Rutherford made the deal and Sandis Ozolinsh, among others, goes down to Florida, you, Kevin Adams, come up to Carolina, I was personally pumped up to be your color analyst. 2002, that great run. You've shared a story, boy, shady 80 Kevin Weeks. And again, he and I were talking about how stellar you were once again earlier today. The conference finals against Toronto. I know you learned a very valuable lesson that really helped you be able to flip that switch and not waste mental energy. And it involved an experience in closing out the Leafs in Game 6. Can you share anything about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I ate at a restaurant in Raleigh, North Carolina before, I guess it would have been before Game 3. Before the games 3 and 4 up in Toronto, and we ended up winning Game 3, and I had eaten at the restaurant. And so before Game 6, before we left Carolina, I went to that same restaurant. And this is back when you get superstitious about things, which I'm no longer superstitious. And this is what taught me never to be superstitious. But went to the same restaurant, and they didn't cook the chicken. I get to Toronto, and we went to dinner that night. And I was at dinner and I'm not feeling too good. This is after our plane had landed. We already got to the hotel. We walk over to the restaurant later on that late afternoon in early evening. And I start going, guys, I don't feel too good. Well, sure enough, I had to leave the restaurant. I get back to the hotel and I got sick all night long with food poisoning. I remember the doctor sitting there just, nothing he could do but just watch. And as every fluid came out of my body over the next 24 hours. But woke up that late afternoon, that game was that night, and I think they put 2 IV bags in me. I had a bowl of oatmeal, and off I played Game 6, and ended up playing one of the better games at that point in my career. And it made me realize at that moment that, you can make a decision when it's the nights that you don't feel your best. I realized those are the nights you can ask yourself a really good question is, how good can I be tonight? Even with all of the circumstances of what I went through, how good can I be tonight? And I think that's the question I asked myself before that game, and maybe every game after that, no matter how beat up you are, how sore you are, it's how can you make the most of what you have that night? And I think that's kind of that moment in time where you realize that you can do a lot if you just know how to really control your brain and put it in the right frame of mind to put you on that path to have some success.
Shovel alert. That's digging in. Because I remember thinking, wow, Roy Hobbs is really going tonight. And I didn't know about the food poisoning. I may have figured it out after the game, but wow. Okay. The Stanley Cup Finals, Roy, I mean, you have one of the great teams in NHL history. And guys on the Red Wings would say it. That series could have gone either way. I remember, the lead you had, 4 Hall of Famers, and Yzerman beating Roddy in the draw, Fedorov to Lidstrom to Hull to tie the game before Larionov scored late and over, as that game went deep. How close was that series? Because my sense was it was very close.
Well, I mean, they won't talk about how close it was, I'm sure. And they won 4-1 in the series, but I felt it was a lot closer than that. When we went to Detroit for game 1, nobody picked us to win that series. Nobody in the world. I mean, it might have been the 20 guys in that locker room that believed that we could beat Detroit. And we did. We believed we could. And so when we went into game 1 of the 2002 finals and we won that game, we weren't surprised in that locker room. And, but I remember the looks on guys like Brett Hull and Brennan Shanahan and, Yzerman and that whole team and Chelios, and they looked like they couldn't believe that they just got beat by us. And then we really, in game 2, they won, but in game 3, I thought we dominated with that minute to go, as you referenced that goal that was scored. Had we get that through that game and that puck isn't tipped off of Brett Hull's shaft of the stick and goes right into the net, we would have won game 3, up 2-1, coming back, for game 4 in our building. Who knows what could have happened at that point? But I would say that, that Brett Hull goal going into triple overtime, and obviously Igor Larionov. Was it double overtime, trip or triple?
I thought it was. I want to say double. Hey, okay. We can fact check with our producer Adam the Admiral Holtzman, because I know my mom and dad came back from France, where you were an Olympian for the game, and they had flight delays, and they got there, I think, during the overtime session. Yeah. The Admiral will jump in. I'm betting double. I don't think it.
It was triple.
It was triple?
Yeah, because when you flip sides, right, they would be on our side for the first overtime.
I know where Larionov. I can see where he scored.
Yeah, he scored to our right, didn't he? So wouldn't that be triple?
He scored. This is where real rocket science is here. But he scored on the end that Detroit would be facing in the second period. So that would be in the first and third overtime. Okay. Right? Yeah. Third triple overtime.
Yep. Okay. At least that's what I saw too. It was to my right.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, what a series. It was a lot closer than 4-1. And when you look back at that roster of Detroit Red Wings, you go, wow. I think their payroll is about 100 million. Ours was in the 20 million. But I always say that, it doesn't matter what your payroll is. It really matters what you have in that room. And I think we had, and that proved to me that you can do great things when you have a team. That was a fun year.
Okay. So now this is all fun as it always is with you, but now we're in the nitty gritty. And I don't want to make this, because Rod gets more mention on digging in, as well he should. Was there a point? Now, Roddy has such supreme belief. When I asked him, you're coming off of a year off work stoppage. Jimmy made a lot of additions without subtraction. Roddy started to feel that you guys could win the Stanley Cup in the summertime, and then certainly in training camp. Was there one moment, a particular story that you said, okay, I've been to the finals twice. this team has a chance to not just get there, but take it one step further?
Well, I already knew after the 2002 run trip that the team would have a chance to win. I mean, I was an unrestricted free agent for the first time in my career after the 2002 final that we lost. I decided to stay in Carolina and signed a 6-year contract. That was one of the first long-term deals that you'd even heard of at that point. A 6-year, they're like, what? Why would they give Bret Hedican a 6-year deal? And I was just thankful that Jimmy trusted me enough to believe in me to give me a 6-year deal. But I took a 6-year deal because I knew that this team would have an opportunity to win in that window. And sure enough, 4 years later, I was right. But I would say that I knew that was a team inside that locker room just because I had seen what winning looked like in Vancouver. I had seen the 2002 run, and I knew we had the core of guys like Roddy and Wes and just our veteran group that was such a good group of men that didn't cut corners when it came to training and working every day. And I knew when you have enough of those types of guys and you then filter in enough talent and young youth around that, you can do great things with a good coaching staff. And I think that's exactly what happened. So I think there was moments, Trip, leading up to that year. And during the lockout, I even told Ray Whitney when he called me in the summer, hey, Jim Rutherford's looking at signing me. I said, yeah, Ray, I think we're a player or two away from winning the cup. And, Ray says, what are you talking about? You guys didn't even make the playoffs last year. And I said, I know. I said, I know our team has a chance to win. We just have what it takes inside that locker room. I believe that. And Ray ends up signing in Carolina. And obviously he was along for the ride as well. But it's pretty cool when you have a feeling like that within a room and it confirms itself through not only all of the moments that you have during the year and even before the year, like in our training camp, I could feel it. Midway through the year, I could feel it, the way we practiced every day. And then to come fruition all the way in Game 7 against the Oilers was a dream come true.
Of course, so you mentioned Ray Whitney, and you guys had spent time together as teammates with the Florida Panthers, so that built-in history. What a fabulous human. Pat Quinn, you said in one word, accountability. You've often said to me, now, Pat Quinn, you had him as a coach. Now you're captain as a player, and Rod. This has always stuck with me, Roy. You've said Rod practiced accountability, but you can't remember one time where he held a player or the group accountable, yet had to throw someone under the bus and with any kind of negativity to accomplish that accountability. That is remarkable to me. How do you achieve that?
Well, I think when you think of Roddy and just the steadfast way he goes about life, and I want to talk about a guy that doesn't cut a corner. I mean, he's the first guy at the rink, last guy to leave, and you've heard all the cliches, and they're true. I mean, that's just the reality. But when your leader, your captain, is a guy that is in that locker room where, I'm on that left side. If you walk in the Carolina Hurricane locker room, I'm on the left side in the middle, and then Roddy is straight in the middle of our locker room. And anytime you look to your left and you could see Roddy sitting there, there's never a doubt in your mind that guy over there to your left, your captain, is not going to be ready to play. And because he's ready to play, that just gets infectious throughout the room when just the way he is as a man. And then never pointing the finger at another player. Like I said, I've never seen him put another player down in all the years I was in Carolina. Now, maybe just personally one-on-one, maybe he had said to me, maybe even about myself, who knows, but that conversation would be more one-on-one with a guy.
Yeah.
But overall, you'd never see Rod Brindamore point at another guy or put him down or put anybody down in that locker room. So he led the way, and I think everybody else kind of took that and kind of got on board with it.
It was very, what an interesting and a year I'll never forget, because for those listening and watching on YouTube and your beautiful vinyl-filled Northern California library, broadcasters don't go out with the players, and I would go on with you for an early dinner, and you usually, and Rod and Wes, 6:00 every night. And I mean, it was and we talk about anything but hockey. So I think about going down 2-0. We're in Montreal. You had to be at 6:00, and Roddy ordered before the menu even showed up at the restaurant. God help him, in a long, 6-course meal. But so now you're down 2-0 through 2 periods. Montreal is carrying the play. Cam Ward, first playoff start, excellent. And this is where I find this just to be riveting. You and Rod talked about that play, cross corner or cross ice pass, and Roddy ties the game. Biggest goal of the playoffs in the second intermission. Can you again try to paint a picture of bring us inside that locker room?
Well, we're down 2-0 in the series. It was the very first series of the 2006 Stanley Cup run. And, losing the first 2 games at home, now you're on the road playing in Montreal. They're leading the game. And your back's against the wall. You don't want to go down 3-0 in a series. Now you got to win the next 4. I mean, this is a huge moment of the series. And who knew what was going to happen after that? But, in between that period, the second and third, I think Roddy and I, we talked about their defense standing up at their blue line, and almost to a fault where they were going to stand up no matter what at the blue line. And so Roddy says, hey, I'm going to win the draw back to you. You pull it back. And when you go across the ice, I'm going to swing away. And as that defenseman stands up at the blue line, I want you to throw it in behind me to keep me on side. And that's exactly the play that him and I drew up. And I got it in behind him. The defense stood up just like he said. The puck comes off the wall. The goaltender came out to try to play it. And that's the one that Roddy, I think, chipped in. And that was the moment that really, I thought, changed everything. We went on to win that game. And then the next 3, we ended up winning the series 4-2. But who knows what would have happened had that, not gone in and had that goal not been scored. So it's a fun moment to think back about.
For me, because I can see where John and I were in the booth, and that was to my right, and you weren't generating a lot, and it was you made the play, and it was Roddy's stick came together, I believe, with Craig Rivet's right as he was shooting the puck, and it just squibbled between Cristobal Huet's legs. And then Eric Stahl scores in overtime, and boom, off you go. Why was Peter Laviolette the right coach for your hockey club? And he's obviously proven to be the right coach for a lot of hockey clubs.
Yeah, I think it was good timing for both of us. I think it was good timing that he was the coach of all of us players. And I think it was good timing for all us players to be, being coached by him. 2 reasons. I think when he first came over from Long Island, I think he thought he was coaching a bunch of boys. And what he realized over that lockout season, that he was dealing with men that already had what it took to win, already had the discipline to train and do the things that needed to do. He just needed to kind of, get the horses all running in the same direction. I think what he did for us was right at the start of the year, he brought us all in. We did this team building course. And I think that was that moment where I felt like it took all the egos out of our locker room. And not that we had any, but whatever was there, any tension, it put us all on the same level playing field. And that was what he did for us. And from that moment on, it just seemed like every practice, every game, we just kind of kept slowly going north. And, midway through the year, just his tempo at which he ran practices. I think the other thing that really is important to think about here is you see some teams doing 7 defensemen. You saw that in the playoffs last year. We did 7 defensemen a lot because he wanted the defenseman always getting up in the play. And that was a real changing point of maybe the NHL. That's when they took away the obstruction and allowed the defenseman to get up in the play. And this is when the whole league changed forever. I mean, it was really that moment in time where the Carolina Hurricanes, us, changed the game, I think, forever, because we were that team that could play 4 lines, get 4 defensemen or 7 defensemen, at least 2 defensemen getting up in the play all night long on every shift. And I think that's what, Peter did for us. And obviously we did for him.
Now I'm thinking about, because it's all coming together here, and you go up 3-1. I remember going back after Mark Recchi got the game winner in game 4. We go back. You had veterans that hadn't won the cup, all the preparations, and Pisani scores in overtime. you get trounced in game 6. And we stayed after the game. Your defensive partner, Mike the Robe Commodore, former dig-in guest, he came up to my room because he couldn't sleep. And so we're hanging out, and he's there with his afro, and, and he's like, because he had been in the cup the season before with Calgary, lost in 7. He's like, I'm not inviting anybody to game 7 this time. I'll party with them after. So this being your 3rd Stanley Cup final, your 2nd game 7, what do you remember as being the crucial moments between the buzzer in Edmonton in game 6 and puck drop for game 7 in Raleigh?
I just remember after game 6, just getting on the plane and going home. I mean,
we had to stay the night.
I mean, the next day, but just not thinking anything of it, just getting home to Raleigh. I think I just remember that morning skate, being there at the rink. And then just before the game, just seeing the calmness among every player. There didn't feel any tension. I felt like the work had been done, Trip. All the hard work that we had put in before the season, training camp, midway through the year, having practices that were such a high level, to now here you are at game 7. It's not like you had to cram for the test. And now you're walking in to go take the test, and you had been cramming for it all night the night before. No. It was the studying had been done. You knew all of the material. Now it was a matter of just going in there and taking the test. And I think that's the feeling I had in that locker room before the game. That's the moment that I realized that, I wouldn't want to be going into that moment with any other players than the guys that I was standing and sitting beside in that locker room. And we went out and we executed. So it was, I feel like you don't cram for the test. Is maybe the moral of the story. You put the time and the effort in all year, so when the test is there, you're ready for it.
That's a great analogy, because if you cram for the test, you're going to be fatigued just because you've utilized so much energy in a short period of time. If you had to, because earlier in the episode you spoke about lessons learned now early in your career in a game 7 for Vancouver. How would you say, and now you're a veteran chasing that elusive Stanley Cup, how would you say in terms of your own personal play, because you played a whale of a game, baby, in game 7, how were you a better defenseman in game 7 for Carolina than you were way back early in game 7 for the Canucks?
Well, I mean, I was 24 years old on the Vancouver Canucks, and I was 36 years old, veteran, for Carolina in that game 7, with tons of years of mental strengthening, mental imagery, strengthening exercises for my body that, put me in a position where I could handle, 82 games and then 4 rounds of the playoffs, and then obviously a game 7, right? I mean, those are layers of years of physical and mental strength that you need to lay on top of one another. It's like bricks. You got to lay those bricks down one by one. And so I think when you really weigh it down, I think what I was is a much more complete player. I was a lot more allowing myself to be just not trying to be more than who I was. I think that's the biggest thing. I can give anybody advice listening. It's like, don't try to do too much, and don't try to do things that are outside your realm of what you're capable of. I think I was able to just stay within who I was within that game 7 and in that whole playoff run that allowed me to play, hopefully, my best hockey.
And, Mike the Robe Commodore, when he was on Digging In, he spoke about, he had to do the work himself, but you really made his career. I mean, he'd be the first to say he never played close to that level he did with you. I mean, what a pairing you were. This seems like the right time to ask this question. You took me out to dinner when the Sharks were here, and we went through every scenario of a 2-on-1 from a goaltender's perspective, from a defenseman's perspective, lefties, righties, other variables. So if there are young aspiring hockey players watching and listening, Hedy, I know it's more than a general question, but what bullet points of advice would you give about thinking in the fastest game on the planet, but not overthinking. So being able to apply those lessons learned from a tactical standpoint, but still being spontaneous and combining the two.
Preparation, right, Trip? It goes back to practicing the habits on a daily basis and practicing at the highest level. I realized, really that 2005, 2006 season, that I could practice at a much higher level every day. And therefore, as the season progressed, your level continues to get higher. And I know you always think that, boy, I need to rest today. And what I realized from that year is like, no, you don't. You really just got to eat better, you got to sleep better, and you got to keep pushing. But I think when you're asking a question that really goes to, understanding film of watching where you can be better on position, where you can be positionally as playing a defense in the defensive zone, where your outs are as far as when you go back to get the puck, how you can, be elusive back there, how you can cut one way and the other, where you can go and put the puck under pressure situations that's not going to kill you and you're not going to turn the puck over. Or if you do turn it over, you get a chance to recover. I think understanding all those things along with the 2-on-1, the outnumbered situations that you put yourself in as a defenseman, you start to break down where you need to be positionally over and over again. So the brain just shuts off. And now you instinctually are allowed to be in that position, but then still let your talent come out when you need it. And so I think that's kind of the blueprint I really tried to use my last, 10 years I played. I watched a lot more film, and I think that really helped me as I applied what I saw in film to apply it to practice, and then it would come out in a game.
Very well explained. All of these things coming together, places going bonkers. What do you remember about when you first saw Rod hoist the cup, and then when that chalice first landed in number 6's hands?
Well, as you can see, I light up when I think about Roddy, getting that cup, and just I can still picture him, when he's kind of walking or stomping, if you will, and he's got the cup over his head. But I just remember that moment of all of us guys, arm in arm, that photo that is there in Carolina, and I have it as well. But just looking at Roddy as we're all arm in arm, looking at him hoist the cup, it was like the man that we all would want to have raising it. All of us were all equally just happy for one man. And then obviously he gave it to Wesley, 20 years in the NHL, never won a cup. And then, I heard Wesley call my name, and I just like, what? So, when Wesley passed me the cup, it was just an honor to get it from him. And, then I ended up giving it to Ray Whitney. But, that moment of seeing Roddy, though, is something that's etched in my head forever. Ray
Whitney, who you said a few minutes ago, you said, hey, sign here, and Whit said, I can hear him saying it. Well, you guys didn't even make the playoffs last year, and now you're handing him the cup. This is what it's all about, baby.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. I never know what I'm going to say at any point in life, but Christy, a gold medal winning athlete, now you a Stanley Cup champion. There is, at least in my view, there is a level of the right kind of selfishness in an athlete's makeup, okay, to be able to be your best. So with two athletes that have climbed the mountain, how has that worked in the way that you've supported each other, if that makes sense, because it's a unique situation?
Well, I think, 20 years, being married, it's something that, you're constantly learning, right? I mean, it's never going to go smooth. You have the peaks and valleys, just like we would our career. I think that's the main thing that we understand now is, we have been through peaks and valleys in our own personal careers, and that the only way you get out of peaks and valleys is if you communicate and you find ways of trying to make each other better. And I think that's kind of what's been our focus, is really understanding that this isn't going to be easy, right? Nobody said it was going to be easy. And we had two beautiful girls to go. They're 17 that were born in North Carolina. They're 17 and 15, Kira and Emma. just great people that they've turned out to be. So I think that's probably what we're most proud of. I'd be honest with you, out of all the things that we've been lucky enough to have happen in our lives is our two girls.
Again, anything, because I'm Lance Romance at heart. Listen, bottom line, Roy Hobbs, anything in life that makes you happy takes hard work, period.
Yeah,
okay? And you can't cram for the test, as you like to say. You move out west, you're an Anaheim Duck. I remember talking to you when you achieved rarefied air and playing 1,000 games in the league. And then, truthfully, you could have just coasted off into the sunset. And as your buddy, you inspire me because there's never been any complacency. When you first decided you wanted to become a broadcaster, you drag me into the competitive fight. You make me better. So what made you want to take your talents to radio, television, and now television for this season that we've just started for the Sharks?
Yeah, no, I've been just lucky. The San Jose Sharks never played for the Sharks organization. Obviously, Doug Wilson, and we tried to work something out my last couple of years. It just never worked out to go from Carolina to San Jose. But, after retiring in here in the Bay Area, doing some work with NBC Bay Area and then eventually falling into the position with the Sharks radio and then now TV, just incredible. The organization that has kind of taken me under their wing, and their fans in particular have allowed me to be part of their family. And I think that's always difficult when you haven't played for them and that they haven't seen you in the foxhole, right? I mean, you as a broadcaster seen me in the foxhole, and our fans have seen me in the foxhole. So there's, and I've seen you in the foxhole, right? And so we've all been in there together with the fans. And so there's a mutual respect between all of us, where that really never happened here in San Jose. But they've taken to me, and I'm just so appreciative of that. So I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to stay in the game. I love the game of hockey. I love our athlete. I think our athlete is really special, and it's a global athlete. We have athletes from all around the world, from all different types of races, and I think that's special about our game. I think it's going to continue to get better in that way, and I love that about our sport, that we're opening and welcoming to all races, and I think that that's something that's going to continue to get better for our sport. But to be a part of this game trip and to be a part of the National Hockey League has really been something I've been excited about. And
I wish that I could see you more than in ordinary seasons, just the two times that the Sharks and the Canes end up together. Because, I mean, again, a dinner that we had, and we're there at the place, the Angus Barn here in Raleigh. You got the napkin out. We're diagramming plays. I love to text you from a defenseman's perspective and say, Roy, you might have a game, but what do you see here? What do you see? And because you make me better, not just with the systems, the tactical part, but just you brought that competitive nature. I usually joke around more during the digging in episode. You have me dialed in. Right now.
You can joke around. I'm too serious. I gotta bust it down.
I'm totally dialed in. I could probably, win a Grammy in one of your vinyls behind, because you have me at my best right now. So tell me about this San Jose Shark team. What your expectations are, what needs to happen to re-enter the playoffs, because for the most part until last year, they have been a playoff contender on an annual basis.
Well, in the West Division 4 that the Sharks are in, I think the Vegas Golden Knights, Colorado Avalanche are the two teams that I see them as making the playoffs. I think they're both terrific hockey teams. They've got a lot of skill. And I think they're going to be there at the end when you talk about the 4 teams that'll come out of that West Division. But the other 6 teams, I really truly believe they're up for grabs. And if you look back at what their season was last year, coaching change, goaltending could have been better. Defensemen, a lot of injuries, and Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns and Vlasic, none of them kind of played on the same page all year long. Up front, there was injuries up front. I can go on and on. I think all 4 legs of the stool, if you will, coaching staff, goaltending, defensemen, and forwards, all of them can get better this year. And I think if there's one team that really wants to prove and have a bounce back year, it's the San Jose Sharks. They have all the tools when you think of what they have on defense, even Erik Karlsson, Brent Burns, and Vlasic. Just those 3 guys alone is something to build upon that if you can get those three guys going on every given night, boy, you're going to be in every game. So I think a lot to look forward to. Two of those positions for the playoffs are up for grabs, and I think Sharks could go after one of those two.
You know what a winning culture is. You mentioned, and I had a great just a moment with Doug Wilson a few years ago up on press row in Carolina. You know, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but pumping your tires. And I said, gosh, Doug, I've known Hedy for a long time, salt of the earth. And he just lit right up. What makes the San Jose Sharks a uniquely special organization?
Well, I think when you get a group of guys like Doug Wilson and his staff that have been around and been together as long as they have a great ownership in Hassel-Plattner. I think when you build all of that together, you have the ability to probably have a lot of tough conversations, and anytime you want to grow as a couple or, as a team, as a company, sometimes you got to get in there and you got to have tough conversations. And I think because this group has been together as long as they have, they've probably been able to have a lot of tough conversations and made tough decisions. And because of that, they've always put a playoff team on the ice. And, Doug Wilson gives his abilities to believe in people that he needs to believe in, and he gives them onus to make decisions. Everything I've seen him do, this is what I've seen him do. So I love the fact that Doug is willing to even listening to guys like me on the broadcast team and a former player, sat down with me from time to time and just to say hello. But he's a respectful guy, and I'm glad he's had some success. So Bob Bugner is going to take over this year. He's got his own staff now as far as the coaching staff is concerned, and I'm excited to see what he can do with the team.
Bobby Bugner and I dug in a time or two when he was a Hurricane. And actually, we had one particular digging session in Vancouver, your old spot. Oh, yeah. The boogeyman. A couple more quick things. The National Hockey League. Yeah. What excites you most about these are unique times where first and foremost, we just want everybody to be safe as we continue to put one foot in front of the other, the road to recovery. No state has felt it more than California, where you are. But what excites you most about the National Hockey League coming together and turning a challenging situation into one we'll look back upon and say, hey, listen, this was a really tremendous opportunity that was seized?
Well, I just think Gary Bettman, the National Hockey League, and all of the people behind the scenes, as you know, Trip, just to get this season off the ground is taking monumental efforts behind the scenes that our fans don't know. But what our fans do know is that they love the sport as much as we do. And, for the teams that didn't make the final playoff group, if you will, from last year, they've been out of the commission for a long time. And so they're ready and chomping at the bit to get back and watch their teams. But, to put the sport back on air and on radio is something that is taking a lot of effort from a lot of people. And I just applaud Gary Bettman and the group. And then I applaud every TV crew and radio crew that's been working behind the scenes to be ready for the 13th tomorrow night. So I'm excited about putting our sport back on the tube, and I just want to give it the best ability that I can to do the best job on the TV side of it for the Sharks I can. So I'm excited about this season.
And I can't wait for you and I to exchange notes on a very regular basis like we always do. You came back to Caniac land where you were ever so popular and will be for your entire lifetime. Remember a bunch of the boys were going out the alumni game for some beers, and you went to the gym with RB, and it gives me a chance to, you guys are, you're not making a comeback, but self-care, which is a mental and a physical thing. I just can't help but ask for your words of wisdom, because the two of you, uniquely so, make that as much of a priority in your life after hockey as you did when your body was your temple playing. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I think, just feeling good every day is part of, and having that getting up and having something to work towards is something that I always really appreciated as being an athlete. And I think a lot of times when an athlete retires, when you don't have that something to train for, you see guys get out of shape and kind of get off the railroad tracks, if you will. But, I've been fortunate enough to continue on after I retired, to continue to strive towards something. Over the last 3 years or so, I kind of got into doing martial arts and doing Kung Fu. So that's something that I've really enjoyed, kind of tackling and getting my body and getting my mind wrapped around. And that's something that I get to do several, 3-4 days a week sometimes, which is something that I really enjoy doing because it's mind, it's body, it's keeping my body moving. I'm working towards, the next belt. And that's something that I've noticed that over time, as you continue to go through the belt process, is that your body changes, and kind of like what we did in hockey, your body continues to change over time, and kind of like what's happening with Kung Fu.
Roy, you spoke a few minutes ago. I think this is perfect to conclude with. Your two beautiful daughters, when they chase their dreams, whether it be athletically or whatever they do, spoke about your mom and dad, their work ethic in North St. Paul, humble beginnings. When they come to you and they say, hey, Dad, we're digging in. You also defined it, but what are the things you're looking for? The attributes they'll have, shovels in hand, as they chase living their best lives.
Well, I just do the best you can, right? I mean, don't leave, cards on the table, if you will. Don't do things in your life that you could have given it more effort. I think what I've learned is that you're not going to be perfect. You're going to make a lot of mistakes along the road. And I think those mistakes will never define you, but it's how you get up and it's how you react to them. It's how you keep going. So for me, I don't know. I'm as intrigued maybe as your question is asking about them, Trip. I don't know what's going to happen to my daughters as far as where they're going to go, but I know I'm excited to find out. And I'm excited to find out, where their journey takes them. We've been blessed enough, Christy and I, our two girls are great people. I think individually, they're just good souls. Right. And I think that's all you ask for in life is just, raise good kids and have them go out there and be good citizens and lead by example, if you will. And I think so far, so good.
Roy, as I thank you, I have my weaknesses, but I do at times have an elephant-like memory and a place called the Butcher Block. And I believe you actually grabbed your meat only in Minnesota. I love it. And you cook it yourself at this restaurant. And I was training with a guy named Matt Mulgrave, who lived with Ted Drury, who was my captain, who played with you in Albertville. And Matt Mulgrave somehow introduced me to this guy named Bret Hedican. It was, I think, 1993. Little did I know that you and I would become lifelong friends. You've taught me so much. You allow me to admire so much, and time is on our side. Thank you, partnero, my compadre, for digging in.
Trip, can't thank you enough for having me dig in with you, buddy. You inspire me as well, buddy. I love listening to you on the broadcast, and I really love our friendship. So I appreciate it. Look forward to digging in some more with you over the future.
I'm going to send you a shovel for the finals there in that beautiful Clue Library. Happy early New Year. Let's have a great season, Roy Hobbs.
Let's have a great season there. Digging in, Trip.
Well, thank you, Hetty. Boy, you just have always had that ability to drag everybody into the fight, to increase their focus, their urgency, their desperation. It's just who you are. And I love you, I think, first and foremost, and most importantly for your friendship and your absolute unconditional loyalty, and that you're the kind of guy I'd want to be in a bunker with an alley late at night. You and I have had some nights together, but we've never been in a dark alley, but I know you'd be there. But also because of there's nothing that you do that isn't with 100% passion, preparation, execution, and you make everybody around you better. That's Bret Hedican. That's why I'm proudly wearing this new zipped hoodie. He said, Trip, you're going to need a zipped hoodie on there. And I said, for you, Roy Hobbs, I do anything. So added it and also called it the Hedican. Check this out. Hopefully you get one. And all of our other merchandise at digintrip.com. Please rate and review this show as well as all of our other ones. And all commentary is welcomed. It's all about constructively growing and becoming a better podcast, to be quite frank. Please do that on all of our audio platforms and on YouTube. And we thank, as we always do, and we always will, the New Country Auto Group, newcountry.com. They have had their shovels in hand with us right from the very get-go. Family-owned, family-run, family-theme dealerships in New York, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and in Florida. I'm all pumped up about their new Ferrari dealership in Naples. It's the finest Ferrari dealership you'll ever see anywhere. If you want to really make a big-time investment and go that route, they are the people that will deliver the goods. Again, those of you watching on YouTube, they have a massive shovel in terms of the way that they go about their business. Variety of all of the top-tier automotive producers. So pick your fancy, whoever happens to be your favorite. newcountry.com. Until the next time, listen, when you look in the mirror, I ask you, candidly from the Dig and Trip studio, have you been digging in? And if you're not, it's never too late to start. Hit that reset button. I'll see you next week for another episode. And until then, enjoy this young National Hockey League season and keep your shovels ideally in hand, if not, in close proximity. Stay safe.
We're digging in with Trip today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today.